Lesson 12.2, Unlock the Problem. This lesson is about describing data collection. So not a whole lot of traditional math in this one. Let's begin by reading this first paragraph. You could read it again later. I'll post it in the Google form. One way to describe a set of data is by stating the number of observations or measurements that were made. Another way is by listing the attributes that were measured. An attribute is a property or characteristic of the item being measured, such as its color or length. Jeffrey's hobby is collecting rocks and minerals. The chart gives data on garnets he found during a recent mineral hunting trip. Identify the attribute being measured, the unit of measure, the likely means by which measurements were made, and the number of observations. So over here is his data, and a garnet is, like it says, a mineral or rock. There's some pictures of them here. So it doesn't say what the garnet is. They're just numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They're just numbered with numbers. The mass is measured here in grams, and these are their masses. If you remember back to chapter 5, mass is the metric way that we describe weight. It basically means the same thing, except it's for the metric system. So if we flip here, for this lesson, you're going to be finding 4 things. The data's already been collected for you. You just need to describe 4 things. These 4 bullet points that you see here on the left. Now, that's a lot to write down on your paper. Writing that over and over, you'll probably drive yourself crazy. So let's shorten them into these. Instead of attribute being measured, we're just going to put a bullet and we're just going to write attribute. So on your paper that you have in front of you right now, why don't you write down that this is the Unlock the Problem for lesson 12.2. And why don't you put a bullet and write attribute. Then we have unit of measure. Instead of unit of measure, we will just say unit. This one will trim down from likely means by which measurements were made, and we'll just change it to tool. What thing did we use to record our measurements? What tool, what piece of equipment did we use? And then the number of observations, we will just change to this number sign, this like tic-tac-toe looking sign. The word of and observations. Can't get much easier than that. So for every problem, we're going to be finding these 4 things. So this is really what you should write on your paper for every problem for this lesson. So there they are, the 4 things. The first thing is the attribute. That is the thing that is being measured. Examples of attributes they measured were something like weight or height, thickness. If you're talking about these rocks, you could talk about colors. You guys learned in Mrs. Zern's class about hardness, the streak test, lots of different attributes. Attributes are things that you can measure. So for this one, why don't you write down what you think the attribute is? And then I'll reveal the answer. The attribute that we are measuring is mass, which again is another way of saying weight. It's the metric way of saying weight. The unit of measurement. So if we were talking about our weights, like me and you, our unit of measurement is pounds. Now I weigh so-and-so pounds, you weigh so-and-so pounds. If we're talking about the unit of measurement for speed, a lot of the time we use miles per hour. So what unit is being used here for mass? It's somewhere in this. Why don't you see if you can identify it? Right, hopefully you realize that it was grams. And it doesn't actually say grams. It has this lowercase g right here. We learned in chapter 5 that the lowercase g stands for grams. It's the base unit in metric mass measurements or weight measurements. The tool. Well, this one you should know by basic common sense. What do you use to measure the weight or mass of something, whether it's you or something as small as a little rock? Hopefully you said scale. Now this is the one that you kind of have to guess on. This the bullet point. This is the one you don't always know 100% what the answer is, so you have to take your best guess. Now, it should kind of make sense. Obviously, a scale, we don't know for sure if they used a scale, but scale makes sense in this case. And the number of observations is pretty easy. Count the number of masses in your table. And this is even easier because they actually number them all for you. So there are 12 garnets, and each one has its own mass. So we're counting all of these. This 7.2, this 3.5, this 4.0, this 3.9, and all of these masses. Altogether, there's 12 observations. And that's what we're going to be doing for the problems today. Getting answers for these 4 bullet points. So hopefully you wrote that down, and we're going to fill in the blanks before we move on to the next phase of